Hello, and welcome to Music Maps, the Rock and Roll Book Club podcast. In each episode, we use a place as a jumping off point for a conversation about music, anywhere from the obvious to the obscure.
Hello, so welcome. We've got part 2 today with Steve Wynn from the Dream Syndicate. His book came out last year. We were lucky to host him here in Walthamstow. And he's now touring. He's got a tour. He's back in the UK here. So where are you playing on this tour, Steve?
Well, it's going to be coming up in the final days of March, and I think it's 6 cities. I should check that, but I know we're playing London.
You can look it up yourselves, listeners.
You know what? If you go on stevewynn.net, you can not only see the dates, but get tickets too. So that's a good first place.
Here in the UK, and then into Europe. Steve's book came out last year. He's obviously well known as the Dream Syndicate, and he's done all kinds of other projects too. So let's get back into this. So part 2, we're going to pick this up in May of 1983. So a new manager has come in, Tim Devine, and he sets up this tour with U2. If you cast yourself back to May of 83, what were you expecting compared to the reality of this tour with U2?
You know, the funny thing about this, and I talked about this at the book event as well, is that when I look back at the reality of, now bear in mind, if you think of the timeline of U2 and when this tour was early 83, maybe spring of 83.
So it's the War album, isn't it?
War had just come out. Yeah. In fact, the tour was booked before War came out. So cast your mind back in your U2 history. They were the band that had I Will Follow, which was, in the States, a modest hit, not a runaway hit, but a modest hit.
So they were known to a degree.
Exactly. The second record didn't do that well, so they were doing just fine, thank you, but they were playing theaters of about 2,500 capacity, and then War comes out and goes through the roof. So these shows were sold out. You know, it was the hottest ticket you could possibly imagine.
It's one of those ones where they've booked a tour and in the meantime they've exploded, but they still have to fulfill these shows, because I think by the next year they're playing like Red Rocks and they're playing outdoor venues by the next year.
Not even next year, 3 months later.
Yeah.
So we, around the time after Kendra left, maybe right after Kendra left, this guy Tim Devine, who was kind of had done some music business stuff at the time. Tim would eventually go on to be the president of Capitol Records, restart Bonnie Raitt's career, be a major figure in a lot of ways. But at this point, he had worked at Warner Brothers. He had been involved. I forget what he did, but he'd worked there, and he had some connections. And he really liked our band, and he said, "I'd like to manage you." And he said, I can really do things with you guys. And we thought, you know what? Have at it, buddy. You know, we're still kind of a crazy, unpredictable band. But he said, now, I can't remember specifically, and I still know I could ask Tim. I don't remember the month he came on board, but I'm going to say, for example, February 1983. Within 2 months, he got us on this U2 tour, which was sold out. So us being on the tour was incidental.
So he's delivered here with...
Oh my God! So he called Paul McGinnis, the manager of U2, and said, "Paul, can you do me a favor?"
So he was a personal friend of Paul.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think still to this day. So he could get on the phone and say, "Paul, I've got this band," and I think U2 was aware of us. Actually, I think they were music fans, you know, and I think
I think they would.
Yeah.
Be too.
So we already had some awareness in the British press, and I think they were hip to us. I don't think it was just like, "Sure, manager." I'm pretty sure they knew us, and in fact when we toured with them, they would listen to our shows and watch our sound checks. But we're on this crazy tour. And when you ask what it was like, the funny thing in my memory is I don't ever remember a time where we went out and celebrated. Yes, we're going to be on the U2 tour. We just said, all right, sounds good. It was everything was so quick that it made us almost blasé. And not in a snotty way, just like, yep, I guess that's our next gig.
Yeah.
And that included Kendra leaving the band, which in retrospect changed us immeasurably. We were never the same band again. We would change members in the years to come and make other changes, but no change was as big as Kendra leaving the band. That was the end of an era. That was the end of Days of Wine and Roses' Dream Syndicate. Other Dream Syndicates would follow to this day, but Kendra was so crucial to what we did, and it broke my heart then, it breaks my heart now, but it had to happen because we were living a life at that point of touring rockers on the road that did not fit what she wanted to do. Kendra was not and is not the kind of person who wants to get in the van with the guys and rock
Some
and
people
roll.
just aren't built for that stuff.
She was not built physically or mentally or
Some people just don't
intellectually.
like it.
She just did not like it.
Yeah.
So she would eventually go on to form a great band, Opal, with her boyfriend David Roback, and find that equally distasteful, and walk off in the middle of a tour opening for Jesus and the Mary Chain after a show one night and say, "I'm leaving, goodbye," to be replaced by Hope Sandoval and yada yada. You've got Mazzy Star. So Kendra quit 2 bands right when they were on the rise, thinking, "Not for me, not for me." So we found ourselves instead saying, with Kendra gone, now we're got a new bass player who was in the band for 6 months, Dave Provost, and we were free to be the rock and roll touring lads on the road band, and we kind of enjoyed being. And you two, bring it on, we're ready.
So the first date's at Woolsey Hall, New Haven, Connecticut. Stops include the Palladium, New York, the legendary Tower Theatre, Philadelphia.
Exciting.
14 dates. How did the U2 crowd receive the Dream Syndicate?
Not bad. Strangely enough, maybe because U2 still, at that point, maybe even the point when they'd sold those tickets, were still kind of, not an underground band, but a critics band still. People who would have bought I Will Follow, or Boy, or records like that, would have been the same people who would have bought Echo and the Bunnymen, who might have bought the Dream Syndicate.
Yeah. And that changes big time, doesn't it?
Changes
in a year or
immediately
two?
overnight.
Yeah.
But at that point, maybe the people who bought the tickets were kind of still hipsters. And I won't say they went crazy for us. And, we'll talk about the R.E.M. thing. That was more like simpatico bands later on. But they received us well, except for one famous show. It's not famous, but famous in our minds. We played Chicago at a very legendary venue called the Aragon Ballroom, where incidentally, my grandfather, a Chicago native, used to go dancing in the 20s. It had been around.
Fantastic.
And we got to play there in this great ballroom. And people kind of booed us off the stage. Doesn't work because we stayed on the stage, but it was pretty rough. And can I swear on the show?
Yeah, go ahead.
We came on the stage, and one of the workers of the show said, "Oh, you got a rough treatment out there, guys. I'm sorry about that. You guys were tough and you hung in there. But you did better than the Babies, or John Waite, kind of was a minor hit band. He was here last week, and somebody threw a cup filled with at him on stage. You guys did better than that." And we think, thank you, but how does that even work? We thought, that's a hell of a story, but I don't want to imagine the mechanics of how that worked. But that was his consoling thing to us. But aside from that one night where we didn't have
Chicago,
excrement thrown at us, we did pretty well.
Philadelphia has that reputation for being tough audiences. Depending on, not so much music, but I know in sports they're really harsh. And I remember, I was a big fan of professional wrestling when I was younger. And
okay.
If it was in Philadelphia, they would boo the good guys and cheer for the bad guys. And the people who were sort of planning the matches never knew how to deal with this because it was completely off script. It would completely throw them off. And
Throws
they'd be
them off
like,
totally, yeah.
how do we deal with this Philadelphia crowd? How do we know what the hell they're going to do? So I guess Chicago, you were just unlucky. You just got a bad crowd.
Yeah, we were actually pretty popular in Chicago. So
At least you didn't get thrown at you.
Okay, we didn't get thrown at us.
So it wasn't that bad.
Philadelphia wasn't bad, though. When it comes to music, they're not too bad. But yeah, it just was luck of the draw in Chicago. Actually, it was kind of one of our best cities the whole duration of the band. But that night, boy, maybe by the time we got to Chicago, things had kind of caught on that they were getting the new MTV fans and things like that. And we didn't adapt our set or tone down our set for the U2 crowds. Like they got what we did.
The same, yeah.
They got the Dream Syndicate, and that's all there is to it.
Because some of those big bands, once they get big, the bands on the undercard just get completely ignored. I've been to shows like that at Wembley and at big venues where it's a big headline act, and the bands underneath are just completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
No one's interested.
And it's a heartbreaking experience to go on stage to a 1/4 filled crowd that gradually fills up to a half full. We were lucky on the U2 and R.E.M. tour. We got a good full crowd from the start, and they were somewhat receptive. I did a tour, and this is outside the timeline, but in 1991, I had management, actually a guy named John Silva, who's become quite a major manager, Nirvana and Beastie Boys and Beck, Sonic Youth, blah, 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 and also a very good friend of mine. He appears in the book. But John, he was managing me, and I owed them a little money. It was like back on my commissions, and he said, "Well, we also manage Pat Benatar, the company does, and she's not as well, but Pat knows.
I'm familiar with Pat, yeah.
So Pat Benatar had a theater tour. He said, if you go on this tour with Pat Benatar, a solo acoustic, they'll pay off the debt, and you can, okay, sure. Let me just say that's the one tour I've done where I felt the wrath of the crowd on a nightly basis, and I've been lucky otherwise.
I was watching a boxing match on Saturday night, and I was explaining to my friend that if you go to a fight in Vegas, the arena's empty. 5 minutes before the fight, it fills up, and then everyone leaves. No one's interested in the undercard, so you do get those kind of weird gigs can come sometimes. But if it pays the bills, opening for you two, I'm sure it all works.
Well, you two
out.
didn't pay the bills, but Pat Benatar did. But
Pat Benatar paid the bills. So off the back of the success of this debut album, plus this high-profile tour, major labels are now interested. You end up signing with A&M. Was there other labels interested too?
Oh God, yeah. It was a very heady experience. I've got the president of EMI taking me out to lunch and saying, "We'd love to have you on EMI. We will come in and help you write your songs and help you shape your songs." And I thought, that's your selling point? So they were out. And then we also were approached by Geffen Records, who really want us on the label, and said, "We will give you an unreleased Bob Dylan song that he's never recorded because our secretary here dates him, so we can get you a..." Lone Justice ended up recording the song because we didn't do it. So we were courted heavily. We went with A&M because they were an artist label and that were run by people like Herb Albert, and we felt like we'd be at home there.
So armed with a recording budget 50 times that of the debut, $150,000 to start with, work begins on the follow-up in San Francisco. Unlike the debut, this was not to be a quick process. Was that apparent quickly, or did it take a while to come to that realization? This was going to take a while.
No, had we known, we wouldn't have entered into it.
It wouldn't have gone.
No, I mean, we almost from start to finish really thought that thought that we there would be a normal recording session, and it wasn't planned for 5 months, but it ended up being that.
Was there a difference in opinion on how this follow-up album should sound?
Gradually there was. When we started...
I think you mentioned when you came, Carl was much more into that big sort of classic sound. And
without too much talking about it, we didn't talk about, okay, guys, what's the plan for this record? Once again, I can't emphasize enough how much we didn't have a game plan. It was so fast, we just would put one foot in front of the other. And going to the studio, we had 8 songs, not many, but 8 long songs to record. And we figured, record the songs, get the record and go. When we got signed to A&M, subliminally, without stating it to each other, my view was, let's make a record no one's ever heard before. That's dark and dangerous, and the songs reflect that. Let's make it dark, dangerous. I want to make Big Star Third, or Tonight's the Night by Neil Young, or one of these records that I love, or A Different Kind of Tension by the Buzzcocks. One of these dark, challenging, intimate records. And Carl, his attitude was, I'm on a major label, I want to make a hit record.
Yeah, so it kind of, there's a little bit of a difference there. I mean, I remember when we did the live show, Stuart Lee was who you were talking to, and he made a fantastic statement that it sounds like it's like an indie record made with the budget of a U2 of a Bon Jovi album.
I remember Stuart saying that, and that's why there's no other record that has ever been or will be like
There's
that.
Nothing else that sounds like
because
it.
There'll never be a case of a band that raw and contentious and strange having that kind of a budget. So it is a big, it's going to be, by the way, reissued in a few months as a box set on Fire Records. We couldn't get the rights to the record back for all this time until just last year, and I'm so excited about that because I think you'll hear with the new mastering and the new, what we do to it, you can more hear the record we made than ever before.
Right, yeah.
And I'm really excited because it's really a wonderful record, but it's also not the Days of Wine and Roses. It's not quite anything else. But it was a very exciting thing that we had done. And the reality is at the end, and I say this in the book, I wanted something, Carl wanted something, 2 totally different things, but we both got what we wanted. He did get the big rock record, and I did get the weird dark record.
There's some incredible timescales here. 6 weeks of guitar overdubs. Did you lose interest? You obviously weren't interested in doing any? Were you just at the hotel while this is all going on?
I was persona non grata. I was so frustrated because I really wanted things to move along. I just wanted to get the record done, have it be good, and get back to touring. And what? We're still doing guitars? And again, the schedule didn't say, 6 weeks of guitars. It's just each day became the next day. So I'd go in each day, are we done yet? And they'd look at me like, stop bugging us. Yeah, but do you think we'll be done pretty soon?
No.
Go back to the hotel. Next day.
We still got 5 weeks left.
No. And day by day, I would come and like, hey guys, not okay, great, and just they didn't. So I would just go out and go to bars and get, if I went to the hotel, I might have been better off, but I would just go out and get hammered. I would get drunk. I would wander the streets of San Francisco where we made the record, and got more and more annoying and annoyed because I just drank and drank and drank and would show up either hungover and drunk and say, hey, when do I get to start singing? Tomorrow. And, it had an effect on me.
So there was talk of bringing in Born to Run engineer Chuck Plotkin, but it doesn't end up happening. So finally, after 6 weeks, you go in to do the vocals. And does this take another 6 weeks?
It sure does. And again, 8 songs. 8 songs, nothing else.
8 songs,
6 weeks, over and over. The one thing, someone asked at your book show, he said, well, did Sandy have ideas about the lyrics? And I said, Sandy didn't have ideas about lyrics, about music, about anything. All Sandy would say is, do it again. Do it again. Almost like he was like leading a torture camp. I mean, all he would say is, I'm trying to do his Long Island accent, do it again. Do it again. Do it one more time. You're almost there. Yeah. Not quite hearing it. Over and over, and all we would just like, okay.
But the one track that isn't played with as much as some of the others is John Coltrane, Stereo Blues. And when the record actually comes out, this actually ends up getting the most traction. Do you think if it had been a bit of a simpler process, it might have ended up better, or?
I don't know. You'll hear on the box set that comes out, we're including a lot of versions, live versions that came right before we recorded the record.
You can hear
and you can hear what it might have been like had we just been the raw band. Personally, when I listen back to those live versions, I like them, but I don't think that's the record that would have been as good. I think, unlike Days of Wine and Roses, had we just gone in and banged out raw versions of those songs, it would have been fine, but it wouldn't have done just the song. So Sandy had the right idea. And I think the way the record came out is the way those songs should have sounded. I just don't think it should have taken that long.
Yeah.
I think we should have been able to make that record in 1 month. And I will say, and Sandy, rest his soul, he died a few years ago, but
so this
I will
is
say...
Sandy Pearlman.
Sandy Pearlman, yes, producer of Blue Oyster Cult and The Clash. Sandy had partial ownership on this wing of the studio, and he was making money each day we went to the studio. I didn't know this at the time. I feel like it was advantageous for it to take that long. I hate to be that suspicious, but that might have been part of it. So my problem isn't necessarily with the results. It was with the length of the process.
Yeah, so it finally comes out having cost $250,000 over 5 months. Mm-hmm. How was it received when it's finally released? Because it is a change in sound from the debut.
And as Stuart Lee said, that was $250,000, 1983 money. So
yeah.
And how was it received? Funny thing about that. It was received in the States, where Days of Wine and Roses was a universally loved by cool rock fans and by rock critics and by people like us. It was received so well. It was received with a shrug almost. Like, people didn't say it's terrible, but a lot of people couldn't get past how long it took, and it was on a major label. And we were the first band of that scene to do a record for a major label. No one else had done that. And it was sort of received very middling and confused. because people really love Days of Wine and Roses. I get it. I always say, I wish we'd made a record in between to show how we got there. We didn't. And this box set will show that a little more properly. Oh, the funny thing is, over here in England and on the continent, it was almost like our first album because we hadn't been here before, and the reviews were over the top. The reviews in Melody Maker, Sounds, NME, across Europe were, this is what we've been waiting for. This is the great guitar American band we've been wanting to hear. And it was shocking, and it taught me a lesson for life. Ernest Hemingway has a thing in one of his books where he says, don't believe the critics. If you believe them when they say you're good, you have to believe them when they say you're bad. And I think about that often. And we learned early on, you're going to hear different things in different places. And to be told on the same record in the same month that this is a grand disappointment and this is the greatest thing ever. Let's say, well, which one is it? Come on. And from that point on, we just carried on. And to this day, I love when a critic, maybe one who I respect, says, you did a good job. It's nice to hear, but also say, well, if I like it, that's all that matters.
Yeah, so the UK was a little bit behind here because the Dream Syndicate hadn't been over here yet. We'll get to that UK tour shortly. But while working on Medson's show in San Francisco, you attend an R.E.M. show at the Kabuki Theatre. And this is the first time you met Peter Buck, who obviously becomes one of your close friends. Do you remember this gig?
Oh, quite well. Quite well. They played the Kabuki Theatre in late '83, around the time we were making Medicine shows, you say, and about the time was when Carl was doing the guitar overdubs, and I was at my most frustrated.
You had 6 weeks of time to fill.
I had a lot of time to fill, and I could get on the guest list somehow, and I got into the show. And it was R.E.M. and Let's Active and the Neats really to fill, and I liked all three bands. And I didn't know R.E.M. personally at the time, but I went to the show, and Peter was and is a very affable and friendly and enthusiastic for music guy. And I managed to go backstage, and Peter and I met and just hit it off like long lost brothers, and spent the entire evening till the sun came up talking about music, drinking, and just became fast friends for life that night. And it was kind of just the thing I needed, because I got to go out and see somebody playing music I loved. Stuart asked I remember this. Stuart asked at the book club show. He said, "Well, did you have anybody in town you could go talk to while this was happening, to give you perspective, to bounce off ideas, to say, listen to what we're doing, help me out?" And the answer was no, because we were in San Francisco, and everybody we knew was in L.A., and we didn't really have anybody to approach, so we were in our own hopeless little bubble.
R.E.M's second album, Reckoning, comes out on IRS. Feels like a natural choice to tour with the Dream Syndicate, but you weren't the original choice to be the opening act. Was there someone else originally?
Yeah, R.E.M. had this tour, and I think we even knew from the start they were releasing their second album, Reckoning. We were releasing our second album, Medicine Show. We were essentially on the same label, because IRS was a subsidiary of A&M.
Right. Okay.
So we initially, from the beginning, and Tim Devine also, we all thought, God, how great would that be?
Yeah,
that's
perfect.
That's the perfect bill. R.E.M., for whatever reason, they've always taken a lot of care in their opening acts from start to finish. They've always been the fans they are. And they had, I guess, promised it to Jason and the Scorchers. I guess they're kind of known over here. And fair enough, another Southern band, friends of theirs. And we thought, oh, damn, oh, well, that's life. And for whatever reason, maybe Jason turned it down or whatever happened. A few weeks later, they came to us and said, oh, Jason can't do it or isn't going to do it. Can you guys do it? And we said, yeah, of course, that's perfect. And by this point, Peter and I are friends, and absolutely, what a great idea. And it was an 8-week tour, a long tour across America, everywhere in America. And we said...
Yeah, 2 months.
2 months. And at this point, Carl and I have... The Medicine Show experience, the 6 weeks of guitar overdubs, everything else, we'd entered the studio still as friends, and we left as just people who could not even speak to each other. We
started friends, end up enemies.
He was disgusted with me. I was disgusted with him. It was not going to happen. So going on tour with R.E.M., we had a tour bus. They had 2 tour buses, the Michael Stipe tour bus and the Peter, Mike, and Bill tour bus. And I found that I didn't want to be around Carl, so I hung out on the R.E.M. bus, on the Peter, Mike, and Bill bus most of the time. And that was kind of how I got through the tour.
There is a lineup change with new bass player Mark Walton comes in before the tour starts, along with additional keyboards to recreate the sound of the biggest sound of the second album. Were A&M happy just to keep bankrolling everything with no questions asked?
A&M bankrolled everything without a hesitation.
But they don't tell you you're paying it all back later.
No, they don't. In fact,
no one ever tells you that.
I did not know the word recoupable at that age. I really didn't even know the word, let alone what it meant.
A lot of people don't know that.
No, you really think...
You find that out later. You get that nasty surprise later.
I've learned a lot since then, but I didn't know much then. And I just thought, when we went on the R.E.M. tour and our manager said, they're going to need a tour bus, they're going to need these hotel rooms, they're going to need all this equipment, they're going to need you to buy them all this fancy gear, which... we actually sold later on.
Right.
All this gear. They said, all right. And we lost $100,000 on that tour, but it wasn't our money. It was their money. But it meant we could do the tour properly, so that was great. But they bankrolled, A&M. A lot of people thought, oh, the corruption of the major label, or you're dancing with the devil. They couldn't have been better. They supported the band. They loved the band. They really did their best to understand the band, and they stuck with us until they didn't want to stick with us anymore. But they were nothing bad to say about that label. The only bad thing I have to say about A&M, and I say this in the book, is they probably should have interfered more. They actually, the opposite way you would think, I wish they would have come in and said,
they stepped too far back, yeah.
They just said, they must know what they're doing. They're the Dream Syndicate, and people love them. And I wish they would have actually come in and said more often, hey, what's going on here? What are you guys up to? Do you want to sit down and talk about that? And the one time they did, you mentioned earlier, is when they said, we could pull the plug on Sandy Pearlman right now and give you Chuck Plotkin. And I said, maybe out of loyalty and also not wanting to upset the apple cart, I said, no, we should be done here in a few weeks. And of course we weren't. So we should have listened to them and said, bye-bye, Sandy. But alas.
Just on the sound on this tour, was it a conscious choice to sort of leave the Paisley sound a bit and represent the newer material on this tour?
Well, yeah. We wanted to present the album.
Yeah.
We were really proud of Medicine Show. We very much, like I say, it somehow pleased Carl and it pleased me and Dennis and Dave as well. We liked the album. We believed this is now who we are. We're not, oh my God, Days of Wine and Roses, that was a whole year ago. Come on, we're not that band anymore. So we went on tour, which actually, there's a live record from that tour, and it's also part of the box set. And I liked the live record a lot, and I liked the sound we had on that tour, and it was very, I think, exciting. And the R.E.M. fans really did like it. We went over well. If we would have been playing the 4-piece version from a year earlier, they might have liked it more. But we kind of wanted to be new. We wanted to change. We wanted to be fresh to our own, perception of ourselves. And it went great. It was a great tour.
The Little America Tour, as it's known.
That's right.
So it gets underway June the 16th, 1984, at the Star Palace in Fresno.
Oh, it did. Thank you. I forgot that.
So this indie rock movement, which started in these sweaty nightclubs, it's now being played out in these quite large theatres nationwide. Could you feel this sort of movement building in the moment?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Much, the U2 thing was maybe a more parabolic explosion. Yeah. But the R.E.M. thing, too, it really felt, again, bear in mind, this is only 2 years after all of our bands have started playing shows. Probably not even quite 2 years that we're out on this tour. And R.E.M. being a band like us, and a band like Sonic Youth and Husker Du and the Replacements and all these bands that the Bangles, we all had this kind of similar age and scene. And that was a tour where I just sat back every night and I would watch every single R.E.M. show. Granted, I had free drinks backstage, but I loved them, and I thought they were...
It's not a bad thing to have to do, watch R.E.M. every night.
No, it's not. And they were so good on that tour, and I would watch every single show and watch the audience, and I didn't feel jealous or competitive. I just watched them and thought, wow, as I say in the chapter heading, our side won. Our little scene is now making it. And they would proceed to go higher and higher and higher and higher, and we proceeded to just keep our level and stay there till the end.
I've always thought R.E.M. one of the great examples of a band who went mainstream really well.
Yes.
They signed to a major, out of time, automatic, they were knocking out fantastic records, and yeah. Because some bands completely nosedive when they do that, but there's some who... I always use that example when people are like, oh, they've signed to a major, and I'm like, but, look at R.E.M., look at Nirvana, it can be done really successfully if you get it right. But the R.E.M. are changing their set list every night, and they even drop in a Dream Syndicate cover one night.
Not just us.
Did you know about it in advance, or was it a surprise?
No. But they played a lot of covers. They were very playful, and they would change the set, and they were very,
I think there's one show where they play almost all covers.
Yeah, they would do a lot of covers, and they were, you talk about the Dream Syndicate and the Replacements were two extremes of bands that would go on stage intentionally to turn things upside down, sabotage it. But R.E.M. had a lot of that too, even in their success, and they would play a cover they just learned at sound check, or just do something they didn't quite know or whatever. They were very pro, but they also had that element. They were still punk rock.
I mean, some of the covers they're doing, ABBA, ZZ Top, Fleetwood Mac, some of them are, you've got to think some of them are designed to irritate some of these indie kids that are at these shows.
We would do things for a reason like that. I don't think
I love that.
Yeah, I don't think
that.
they did it. We would do things to annoy and challenge. Right?
They were just really open-minded in their taste. So they just play what they wanted to play.
Fun. And they did, like you said, we played in Buffalo well into the tour, and I think maybe everyone's a little tired or whatever, or bored is too strong a word, but just kind of looking for something. And they went on stage that night at this Buffalo show.
Yeah, Buffalo,
played.
yeah.
You can look at it on Setlist FN or whatever. The Buffalo set.
Look it up if you want to see what they were playing.
Oh my God, it was all, like you say, some expected covers, some ridiculous ones, mostly covers. And after the show, I went out, I think in the parking lot or maybe in the lobby of the club, one or the other. But I would go out and mix with the fans. And I remember somebody saying, "Do you know those guys?" So of course they're our friends. Tell them we're really mad they should have played their own songs. And I kind of realized, for R.E.M., it's just another stop on the tour. But for these fans, we want to hear Radio Free Europe, for God's sake. And,
it's a compliment in a way, though.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Does this again play out much like the previous tours where some stops the band are treated like kings and others, the locals haven't quite got the memo yet about the band?
By that point, let's put it this way, at all the stops, for the most part, people loved R.E.M.
I'm thinking specifically Boise, Idaho.
Oh, my God, Boise, Idaho. Well, that's its own story, boy. Boise. Let me put it this way. Boise, Idaho is not a stop on most tours. I've played Boise one other time in my life. It's just not... If you've been to Idaho, you just want to get out. That's all there is to it.
I've never been to Idaho.
It's a way to get from here to there.
Okay.
And by the way, it's a very right...
No offense if anyone's listening in Idaho.
I'm sorry. I'm just to get out because it's a right-wing state and whatever.
Get in the car and leave.
I just lost all my Boise fans, but but all three of them. I'm sorry about that. Come see me somewhere else. But Boise, this is 1984. R.E.M. is in the top 40. We've been around for a while. We roll into town, and what's the headline in the paper that morning? New wave comes to Boise. I mean, that's the headline that morning in the paper. And sure, it was the smallest gig of the tour, a dump. And we were all so frustrated. And Peter, in fact, by the end of the set, was so annoyed, he smashed his guitar against the
he
low
broke
ceiling.
his Rickenbacker, yeah.
The Rickenbacker he still has and still plays. And I remember Peter's face after the show, like, what have I done to my favorite guitar? Luckily, they had a good crew who, I guess, glued it back together. I don't know how it is, but I know that guitar, and it still somehow works. But Boise, oh my God. But that was the anomaly. It was really, we finished the tour in Atlanta, which is their home turf, and played 2 nights in the 4,000 seat or 5,000 seat capacity Fox Theater.
Yeah, the Fox Theater. Yeah. So that's July 28th of 84.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The tour comes to an end in Atlanta. How big did you think R.E.M. might get at this moment?
Not as big as they got.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have.
They were the biggest band in the world for a couple of years.
They were, especially everywhere, but definitely here.
They were huge here. They were absolutely. I remember a school friend of mine had tickets to see them with his family. So it was mum, dad, sister, brother were all going to drive. I think it was the Birmingham NEC. They were all going to drive because these tickets were goldust. There was people queuing up with pitching tents outside the venues to get the tickets. It was they were absolutely huge.
They were huge, bigger here. They were plenty big in the States, let me tell you, but they really hit it here in Europe.
They were massive here.
No, I don't think I saw that. I could see the ascension. I thought, well, they'll be as big as, who knows? I'm trying to think of an example of a lower level band as Echo and the Bunnymen.
Yeah.
These guys are on their way to being Echo and the Bunnymen. These guys are on their way to being the Psychedelic Furs. That's all you could hope for.
And sometimes those indie bands don't have that ambition. I've heard bands like The Strokes are like, we never wanted to be that big headline festival band.
Yeah.
We were thinking we just wanted to be that band that played at 5 p.m. But then it just exploded a bit like R.E.M. But one thing I've always been amazed about R.E.M. is they didn't tour, did they, for years? They didn't tour Out of Time or Automatic for the People. They weren't touring. And could you sense anything at this point that might lead to them not wanting to tour for a while?
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
No, at this point they were guys who loved the road.
Because they reached that point where part of the reason for that huge demand for seeing them is because they didn't play very often. They weren't a band that were that visible.
I think they were. Well, Peter just had his twin daughters, and they were, I think, tired by that point. It's all been documented. And they were just kind of. ironically, that's when they had their biggest hits.
Yeah.
And
That's what
they
I mean.
came back from that and were bigger than ever.
Yeah.
That's not a recipe for success, what they did, but they had to do it.
They didn't tour out of time or automatic for the people.
It's amazing
I just
to
find
think
that
back on
incredible.
It's incredible. It really is.
They were selling a lot of records. I'm sure they were doing all right.
Well, one thing about R.E.M., and this is why when you talk about they did everything the right way, always did everything on their terms.
Yeah.
Peter.
That is so on their terms.
And Peter's very smart, and he knows what things, and he knew the things to do and not to do. I think the whole band would admit he was kind of the conscience of the band, and they did the right thing always, including taking those 3 years off when they had to. Like most people, I wish they'd get back together again, and I have no say in the matter.
I've only seen R.E.M. once.
Well.
I've seen R.E.M. once. It was at the Brixton Academy. They were playing a one-off show at the Brixton Academy, which is a small venue. And my friend had the tickets, and he lived out of London, and there was a transport problem, and he couldn't get in, and he ended up having to go to, I think it was Stansted Airport, to then take a bus, and he arrived like 10 minutes before the show started.
Well
so
done.
we almost missed it because he had the tickets on him. Because in that era, it wasn't on your phone. So
No.
yeah, it was. Maybe they will get back together.
You know what? They don't need. It's something I talked about recently with somebody where the difference between the Dream Syndicate and R.E.M. We reunited because we had something more to. Not something more to say, but because we wanted to change the ending of the story. We felt unfulfilled by how things ended in the '80s, and we chose to reunite to reframe what we had done. R.E.M. don't need to do that because they did everything. They've got nothing else to add.
Yeah.
They did it. They don't, for more money? To be like Oasis, who needs that?
Yeah.
They did it. They made great albums. They had great tours. They did it their way, to quote Frank Sinatra. And that's right. We in the Dream Syndicate, even now to this day, continue because as much as I love our last 2 albums, Out of the Grey and Ghost Stories, they weren't quite the band and records exactly we wanted to be. And those tours, as great as they were us still finding our way. Now the band is the band we dreamed we could be when we were in the basement in 1982. And I love that.
Yeah. There's a number of motivations for coming back later, isn't there?
Oh, money's fine, but yeah. If you,
Some it's strictly financial, but others it's for many other reasons.
that's right. And that's why I think we're a good band now, because we reunited for the right reason.
You are presented with the choice of a big budget video or a tour of Europe, and you choose the tour. Was coming to England a long held ambition for you? Being a keen reader of the music press.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'd never been to Europe before. I'd never been to England or Europe. I mean, I'd traveled the States barely before the Dream Syndicate. So, yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, I can't emphasize. I hate the term Americana, and I don't, like I said, I hate it because it's done a lot of good by me, but
I don't like that word either.
it's so meaningless, and also, I've never been...
It's too broad.
Too broad, and I've never been personally... My favorite music is not Graham Parsons and country. I'm fine with it, but I'm more of an R&B and psychedelic person and things like that. And so, I'll take that any day of the week, or reggae or things like that, or other kinds of world music, trippier music. I'm just not a, Loretta Lynn on the back porch kind of guy. So, to be seen as part of that, it was never necessarily our thing. Yeah.
So you arrive at Heathrow Airport, and you're taken straight to the Dingwalls in Camden, which is the site of the first gig. I actually walked past this the other night, still there. Mm-hmm. So the band were still critical darlings here in the UK because you hadn't actually been here yet. So that thing in America where the second albums come and the sounds change, that has not affected the British audience at all.
That's right.
Yeah. Do you remember anything about this Dingwalls gig?
Well, I mean, it was great being a big deal again.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, no matter what, no matter who you are, you can never have that first flush of excitement. Even if you get bigger and bigger, that first thing where, oh my God, people like us. And coming here to England and going over the continent, we had that again. We're the hot new band. Whoa, we get to live that all over again, and it was exciting. It was gratifying, and it's what we needed at that moment. I felt like, great, thank God. As good as the R.E.M. tour was, we were second fiddle. Now we were the big deal. And the Dingwall show was fantastic. It was people were going nuts. It was jam packed. It was great.
One thing I have to ask you about this tour, there's a story about taking a ferry from Newcastle So this is the North Shields Ferry. So I'm from the northeast. So my mother's family are from South Shields, which is just south of this ferry terminal. And my granddad was actually a river pilot on this river. So that was his job his entire life. So as soon as this North Shields ferry cropped up, so I've been on this ferry. It's quite rough. It still runs today.
It does.
It goes
rough.
it goes to Amsterdam. It goes to Amsterdam today. Oh. But you take this ferry to Norway.
Yeah, Bergen.
Do you have any memories of getting on this ferry?
I mean, well, rough appealed to me at the time. I'm a guy who's been wandering the streets and bars in San Francisco, and, I'm looking for rough back then. So I do remember that.
It's full of truckers from Newcastle.
That's right. And I didn't sleep a bit. And what I remember about this show is drinking with a bunch of truckers till dawn and having them try to teach me how to speak Geordie. It was like, so that
you
was
won't be able to do it. Yeah.
I wasn't. Well, I was drunk, so it helped.
I can't do it, let alone.
That's exactly what. I remember we drank all night long and got to Norway as the sun came up, and it was glorious. I remember that. But yes, I remember that vividly. Whiskey and learning, trying to learn a new accent.
That ferry, yeah. I took that ferry once, and the bit where we were leaving the port was, for me, because my granddad worked on that river, was fantastic. So I was sat at the back of the boat, going up there. But then the journey itself, there's like a nightclub on there and a casino and all this other stuff.
Typical.
And there was actually, in the cabin next to me, there was a fight, like a full fight. There was like blood in the corridor.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was like, I don't think I'll take this ferry again.
Oh, dear.
So it's a one-time thing for me. So you play another date at the Marquee, and then a tour of Japan with the Rain Parade. But then when you get back, you decide to break up the band. Was this long in the making, or did it come around quite quickly?
It's funny because we did continue the lineup with Carl and Mark Walden, as you mentioned, and through the European tours, but came back to L.A. and just felt disenchanted and broke up, and thought that was the end. But 3 months later, I missed playing with Dennis and Mark, who were still good friends, and we got together and played, and it felt good, and we wanted to.
It was only a temporary breakup. This was.
But it wasn't. It wasn't. This is where it gets very, very strange and controversial, because when we broke up. It wasn't. I think Carl might see it as, they broke up just to get away from me and then reform, and it would seem that way to him. And I regret that, and I've tried to make peace over the years. I could see how you'd feel that way. But we just wanted to play together. And when we found Paul Cutler, who was an old friend, a former producer of ours, and a great guitarist, and it felt so good, we could have called it anything. We could have called the band any name. We could have changed the name. But the Dream Syndicate was a good name. It has served us well. It was me and Dennis and Mark, and, well, why not? So we did keep going, and it went great. People accepted the guitarist change. There was no blowback. When they saw us play with Paul, they loved it. And we just moved on. But Carl might have felt, and I understand this, and I'll never know because he won't talk to me anymore, haha. But Carl might have felt at that point, how dare they break up the band and reunite without me? And I get it.
Yeah.
It's one. I try in the book to be very honest about these things and very honest about myself, and I think that it's something I handled really badly. I wish I would have been more communicative with Carl and say, we're not getting along, pal. We shouldn't be in a band together. And he might have then had the chance to say, well, let's try to get along better. But you don't do that when you're 24.
These bands who, don't speak to each other until they're on stage, I just think it must be so exhausting to do that every day.
And it is.
If they despise each other, the Everly Brothers, hated each other. Yeah. It must be so tiring to do that every day.
And there's so many bands like that.
Yeah.
And I said this at your show, at the book show, I said, from that point on, I never wanted to be in a band ever again where I didn't like my bandmates. And I never have been. I've only been in bands where I really enjoy the company of my bandmates ever since.
It's a good place to be, isn't it?
It's the only place to be. Especially when, if you are Oasis, I keep going back to the example, but if you are any other band who's huge, you can say, I'm going to suck it up. I don't want to see him, but I need the money.
There's enough money in that to make peace with it, perhaps. 'Cause
Exactly.
There's,
And we weren't making that kind of money.
there's tens of millions, hundreds of millions there.
I'll tolerate that guy across the stage.
Yeah, I'll
Hopefully-
tolerate this guy for that money. But I mean, but if you're in the back of a Honda Civic,
we weren't after the, but yeah.
No, but you don't really want to be doing that.
Yeah.
So with that, the 3-year arc kind of reaches its conclusion there. So the Dream Syndicate do return. If we talk to Steve in the future, maybe we'll pick this up or pick a different period
With the next book.
in their history.
Yeah.
Do the next book. So the book's out on Jawbone. It's called I Wouldn't Say It If It Wasn't True. Steve's obviously touring in March across the UK and Europe. So yeah, you can do all that. So thank you to Steve.
Oh, thanks very much, Simon. It was a pleasure talking to you.
So you weren't actually at this recording on this occasion, but you still have to answer the customary 3 true or false questions. So, did this happen or not? When touring with R.E.M, both bands, the Dream Syndicate and R.E.M, went to see at the cinema the seminal Talking Heads concert film Stop Making Sense. Did this happen, or have I just completely made that up?
I don't remember reading that. I do remember reading the chapter about them playing with R.E.M, but I don't remember that.
It did come out in 1984.
It's possible they all had a lovely time in the cinema with popcorn. So, yeah, why not? I'm going to say yes to that.
False. They went
Is
to
it Spinal
see...
Tap?
It's Purple Rain,
Ah, right, okay.
which was another 1984 theatrical release music film. So, yeah, Purple Rain. That's what they went to see
Lovely.
during an off night. On the same tour, an impromptu gig with Peter Buck and Steve included a cover of the Ghostbusters theme. Do you think this happened?
Sounds a bit frivolous.
It does sound quite frivolous.
Hang on. So the last one I got wrong, and that was a misled thing. So, yeah, Ghostbusters. They did that. Sounds very much Peter Buck thing.
It did happen, yeah. Ghostbusters was played. So Ghostbusters, Mark, is the only song I have ever participated in a karaoke performance of. So there's that trivia too.
Don't be... wear that as a badge of pride.
There was about 20 of us in a cricket club about 20 years ago.
The only time I've ever been to your favourite place on earth, the Prince Charles Cinema, was to a Frozen sing-along.
Oh, right.
I didn't
Did
get
you
dressed
sing?
up. I did sing. Let it go, let it go. Do-do-do-do-do-do. I didn't get dressed up, though. That was the kids.
Ah, well, there we go. The other notable thing about that karaoke Ghostbusters was a man in the cricket club, Mark, drank a yard of ale. And he was very short, and his stomach expanded about 5 times, and it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
It was a popular thing in the 70s. I used to see that a lot on like these mad news programmes, like Nationwide. Men with these strange, vessels.
Yeah.
Yard.
That's what he had. That's what he had. It must have belonged to the cricket club. They've gone out of fashion. I've never seen it.
Nonsense.
I've never seen it since.
Bring
That's
it
the
back.
one and only time I ever got to see that. Third and final one. On the day of a Dream Syndicate gig, Steve was informed just before taking the stage that Lester Bangs had sadly passed away. True or false?
I can see them all crying. Oh no, Leicester's left us. I mean, no, false.
True.
Crazy.
True, he was told by Richard Meltzer, another
famous American
legendary music writer, told him just before the gig.
Hey man, Leicester's gone.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, God bless.
At the end of each episode, we each recommend something you've liked for a long time, or a recent discovery. Mark, I know you have many of these ready always, so there you go.
Well, I've been watching Series 7 of Formula One Drive to Survive on Netflix, the apogee of sporting documentaries, and this one, I think, is probably one of the best in the series.
Never heard of it. I don't know anything about Formula One. Almost nothing. So maybe I should watch it.
So Formula One has been regenerated and attracted a whole new audience of females and younger people, primarily as a result of this documentary series that started, 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, I too I used to like Formula One when I was younger, and then I fell out of it because I think one of the criticisms was that it simply became a procession. Yeah, the same people won every time. It was just cars going around the place, and this has revitalised it. So yeah, my recommendation is that.
Yeah.
You? What about you?
I'm going to Madrid to watch Arsenal in a month. So we are playing Real Madrid in the Champions League. Yeah, so we played Real Madrid last in 2006, Mark. I was there in the back row of the stadium. We, of course, won 1-0 away on the day. First English team to win in Madrid. And I always said I'll never go back because it will never be better. But when we qualified last night and drew Real Madrid, I couldn't resist going. So I booked it last night. So I'm going. We will probably lose. We're unlikely to win. Our entire front line is injured. But you never know. Funny things happen.
I like your idea that this is turning into a sports podcast because, as we know, music podcasts are very niche. No one listens to them. Yeah, but sports podcasts are massive, aren't they?
Yeah, we could end up with a whole sports podcast.
Excellent. Let's do that.
Sports we don't know anything about. That would be a fun idea, fun concept. Judo, first episode.
Go with that. Yeah.
See how long we can talk about a sport we know nothing about. So what's coming up live events, Mark?
We have loads of live events. So in March, we've got on Sunday, 23rd of March, in the afternoon, Julia Rayside, the writer Julia Rayside, with the comedian Robin Ince, talking about her fantastic new book. Followed the next day, an evening event, Guardian writer John Harris, 24th of March, on his book Maybe I'm Amazed, which is remarkable. And a couple of days later, we're at our other haunt, Mother's Ruin, for your favourite. I know you're excited about this. Mixing pop and politics.
Yeah.
We've just put on sale 2 events with the awesome writer John Higgs about his Doctor Who book.
Yeah.
And on the 3rd of April, Kate Mossman, one of our favourite writers, on her encounters with rock stars. Now, we ticket through Eventbrite mainly, so follow us, subscribe to us on Eventbrite, or put in Rock and Roll Book Club and go to our website, and you'll keep up to date on all the stuff there. As always, if you enjoy this podcast, give us a like, or write a review, or even better, send us a few quid via Ko-Fi to pay for the batteries and the Zoom recorder that we use, and some little discs that record all the info on.
That's the one.